Shalom, shalom. Welcome to another Word of Torah. I'm Rod Bryant along with Moshe Abrahams. We are excited about today's lesson because we're going to continue on in Genesis, the sixth chapter. Sixth chapter around verse what?
I think we're on 12, verse 12. Yes,
Verse
12 of
12.
the
Yes.
sixth chapter.
So we had just finished in last week's class. We're talking about the Hamas, the chaos that existed in the time of Noah, or actually right prior to Noah. And we're coming into the flood narrative, which is going to be very interesting. But before we start, make sure you subscribe. We really appreciate it. Moshe also has a YouTube channel. It's called youtube.com/, see, I did it right this time.
Nice.
Word of Torah.
Word of Torah, absolutely.
And you can get a hold of Moshe if you have any questions or anger or disbelief. Email him. If you want to say something nice and pleasant, email me. So it's mosheteaches@gmail.com. Okay.
I like the challenge. I
rolling.
once had an anti-Semite start commenting on videos. This was
really?
a few years ago, and he went through every video I put up there, and he was making like crazy.
Oh, fantastic.
Weird, very
Brilliant.
creative, and I didn't know what to do about it. And so I happened to have access to a ukulele. I was staying at a friend's house who had a ukulele, so I wrote him a little song. And at the end, he was like, "Oh, I should hire you to be my bard." And I was like, "I'm not sure what our relationship is now anymore." Because it was very clear when you were saying horrible things to me.
That's good. So, were you the one that told the story
bring
about
me the challenge?
Were you the one that tell me the story about Rabbi Ginsburg, where someone said he was doing a lecture, and there was somebody in the back of the class, and they were heckling them the whole time? Were you the one telling me that?
Rabbi Friedman, yes. Yeah, Manis Friedman, yeah.
Tell that story. It's a really brilliant story. People should learn to turn an insult into a compliment.
Yeah, we're talking about the guy who kept on heckling in the middle of his lecture.
Yes. And then he went up to the rabbi after and was like,
and he said, let me tell you, Rabbi, you and I have got nothing in common. You keep all the laws and everything, and he was clearly very angry about something. And Rabbi Manis was like, well, I've never met this guy before. He's clearly not angry at me, And so he talked to him for a couple of minutes, and he says, so tell me, what do you do? What do you do? And he said, well, every Saturday I go down to the local corner shop and I buy some bacon and I fry it up and I eat it there and there. And so Rabbi Friedman said, oh, wonderful. I thought you said we had nothing in common. And he said, what, you eat bacon? He said, no, but we clearly both keep Shabbat. You go down every Saturday to fry up this bacon? He says, okay, your methodology is a little bit squiffy, but you're remembering the Sabbath. You never forget the Sabbath. That's wonderful. Brilliant. And the guy thought it was funny, and then he said eventually he started learning with him. And the guy became a Baal Tshuva.
So the point is,
the thing that he saw, he saw someone who doesn't believe in God can't be angry at God.
Right.
Someone who's passionate, even in the negative, they're struggling with something inside. And you can offer them an opportunity to say, you know what, we're not fighting. I'm not fighting you and you're not fighting me. Right. You're struggling with something and you need help. Otherwise you wouldn't have walked up to me in the middle of this lecture. You're coming to speak to me because you need help. So many of us do. Yeah.
That's the beauty. Okay, we are in chapter 6, verse 12 of Genesis. If you would like to turn into your Chumash or go online, go to Sefaria.com.
Such a great website, Sefaria.
Oh, brilliant website. I'm going to go ahead and type it in now.
I'm gonna rush us through this. This is where we left off last time, so I'll go through quickly and then we'll slow down when we get to the new verses. So V'yar Elohim, God saw et haaretz, he saw the earth. V'hine, and behold, nishchata, she had been corrupted. Ki, because hishaked kol basar, all flesh had caused the corruption et darko, of his path. Al haaretz, of God's path on the earth. So that means that everything was corrupted. All of this life was doing the wrong thing. Whatever is the muzzle, whatever is the purpose of a horse, the horse was not doing it. Whatever was the muzzle, the purpose of a person, the person was not doing it. So they had all kind of lost their way. And so they were acting out in these unnatural ways and getting up to these things which aren't the way that God wanted. And it got to the point where if the world is filled with Hamas, if the world is filled with violence, then the world is filled with suffering. So this can't be how we go. So V'yomer Elohim le Noach. Wouldn't you love to see your own name in a verse like that?
Yes.
V'yomer Elohim, God said le Noach, to Noach. So what we have here, this first word, this is probably the first word that everybody's going to recognize on sight, because this word comes up so often in the book of Bereshit. Amar means to say. The Yod means he will do, or it will do. So Yomer means he will say. And the Vav, with a petach, is a tense flipper that flips the future tense verb into the past. So it means he said. And then we get who said, and who said is Elohim. So God said. And then we say le Noach. And Lamed means two or four. So it means to Noach or for Noach. And then what happens in the next line is the beginning of what God said. Kates kol basar bar lifnai. This is very sad. We had a phrase, kites yamim, in the story of Cain and Hevel. And kites yamim sounded like it was saying the end of days. But actually, kites also means summer in Hebrew. The reason being the start of the year, the Rosh Hashanah, is in autumn. So it goes from autumn all the way around and it finishes in summer. And that's when we harvest. So we finish the year with the harvest and then we feed ourselves for the next year. So we must begin the next year after the harvest in autumn. But this isn't what this is saying. This isn't saying the end of days in this year. This is saying Kates kol basar, the end of all flesh. And Bo bet aleph means to come. And lifnai, the panai is the face, the panna. Is the verb to panna, is the verb to face somewhere. And when you face somewhere, you turn your face towards it. And this is le pan, to the face, and the yod in this case, not a yod and a tzere. Yod and a tzere would be of, but a yod and a petach is short for ani. It's my. So the end of all flesh has come before me, says God. I'm seeing this is what's happening next. This is what's going to happen. Why? Ki, because malah haaretz chamas, because filled up is the earth with violence. Mi panehem. Mi panehem is weird, because again we have panei, pana, the panim, the face, the yod and the tzere, the face of, and hem is them, from in front of them, from in front of who? People who are doing the violence. They're putting out violence in front of them. This is what they're doing. They're walking around, filling up the earth with violence in front of them. That seems to be, they think that's their purpose, to be violent.
Another way to say that is they followed after violence. That's what they chased after.
But certainly if you combine it with that word malah, it's to fill. It's not just a bit. It's like it's saturating the place with violence, right? The hinani. Now this is just like hine, behold, but this is hinani. Ani is I. So God is saying, behold I, hinani. Mashchitam. So again we have shechet, right? We have shin, chet, taf, which means to corrupt or destroy. We have a yod in here which makes it more intense and makes it a piel. So it's a very dramatic, intense, breaking, destroying, corrupting. And the mem at the end is short for hem, which means them. So he's saying, I'm going to destroy them at Haaretz, the land. I can't allow this to continue. Now, the childish among us will say, well, that's, two wrongs don't make a right. But actually, sometimes it's not that it does, it's that what God is doing is stopping the violence from continuing. If he could persuade everybody on an intimate level, I'm sure that's what we would do. But he's given them free will, and they've chosen to use that free will to make people suffer. And you have to stand up against suffering. You have to stand up against evil ideas, evil ideologies, violence. Sometimes we don't like it, but sometimes you have to say, I'm not going to allow this to happen any longer.
Absolutely. Because to ignore it would be the ultimate injustice and bringing more chaos and suffering.
Elie Wiesel says, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
That's exactly it.
To stand idly by the blood of your neighbor and allow this to continue. Sometimes you have to. This is a good example with the police.
Yes.
People don't like being put in handcuffs, but sometimes if they're hurting someone, you've got to put them in handcuffs. You've got to restrict their freedom
Absolutely.
to protect the freedom of the other person.
Absolutely.
So God is saying he's going to do this. He doesn't explain how. To start with, he just says, "I'm not going to allow this to continue. I'm going to interrupt this. I'm going to destroy this element which is bringing the violence." But he says, "Asay lecha." Asa is to make or do. Lecha, lamed as a prefix means to or for, and cha means you. So make for yourself. Asay lecha tevat atzei gofer. Now this is funny. So a tevat is an ark.
Mm-hmm.
Not an arch, but an ark might have an arch in it. But this is the same word as we use for what Moses was put in the Nile.
Correct.
That he was rescued by his mum and his sister by being put in this little protective box and sent out on the water. And this is what God's doing with Noah and his family and everyone else who's going to be put in this ark. He's making a little protective box, sending out on the water while he deals with everything else. So make for yourself a tevat eitzeh. Eitz is trees. Eitzeh is the wood of gopher, and it's nothing to do with gophers. It's nothing to do with prairie dogs,
right?
Or or the apprentice that fetches you your hammer. Go for this. Go for that.
Right.
This is the Hebrew word for cedar. So it's a cedar wood.
Very hard, hardy wood. Yes.
Right, and locally abundant.
Yes.
It's handy. So make for yourself a box of cedar wood. Now, so far so good. I made a box before. I did one in wood shop. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But we don't have the scale yet. We're going to get more information. We have kinim, and kinim is like nests. This is interesting. So make a box of cedar wood with nests in it. Ta'aseh et hateva, make, you will make, because the taf means she will do or you will do.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it means you will do, you will make. Et hateva, the ark, the kafarta. Now, what's happening here? We have kafar, which means to tar something, to seal something, varnish it, whatever. And then we have a letter at the end, ta, which is short for ata. So it's like you will do. Now, in ta'aseh, if you put the letter at the beginning of the verb that tells you who's doing it, that's a future tense verb, unless if it hasn't got a tense flip, it's a future tense, right? So ta'aseh means you will make, but kafar ta means you did it in the past, right?
Right.
But you can put a vav on here, and you can use that as a flipper. Now, not every vav is a flipper. This one happens to be, and I told you before that with the v'yomer from the previous verse, you can see that it doesn't have the same vowel. So I'm going to tell you a new rule. When it's the future flipped to the past, the vav has a petach, right? Which, let me just zoom in so you can see it better. A petach is like the tongue depressor in the doctor's office. It's a little horizontal line like that, and it makes you go, ah. So the noise is ah, and the line is like a tongue depressor. So when you're going future tense, flipping it to the past, tongue depressor, it means it's a tense flipper. But when you're going from the past, and this is flipping to the future, you have sideways binoculars. That's called a schwa, which means no vowel or almost no vowel.
Like so looking into the future, yeah.
Oh, that's the best way to remember it. I'm going to steal that and pretend it's my idea.
Yes, okay, fine. So, I got it from you anyway. No.
Oh, did you? Oh, brilliant. So,
let's just say that.
Having a bad memory keeps everything exciting. You can enjoy the same idea again and again. So this is into the future. Kafarta, you will tar. Ota, passive pronoun. The passive pronoun for me is ot. So if I did something to you, I'm ani. If you did something to me, I'm ot. Ot, oto is him, ota is her. And the ark that's going to rescue everybody is female. It's going to have this nurturing, motherling vibe to it, right? And I have one little thing that I stole from Rabbi David Foreman to share with you in a second about that. So you're going to kafarta ota, you will tar her, mi bait. Now bait is a house, so this is implying from the house, which means inside. Because the most useful bit of a house is that you can go in it. You can't go in it, you don't have a house, you've got a cliff. Or michutz, and chutz is outside. So inside and outside, berkofer, with tar. Tar, her, inside and outside with tar. Now, the reason that the ark is a feminine word, and the reason I said about it being a mothering, nurturing thing, eventually it's going to be like pregnancy, right? It's going to be like, she has a belly and all life is inside, ready to spill out onto a new world, right? She's going to have
beautiful.
this
That's good.
nurturing, protective, providing energy. Now, Rabbi David Foreman, wonderful tzaddik, who we're obsessed with, he tells that the story of Noah is the opposite of the story of Bereshit. That in Bereshit, it's all about creating and bringing out and taking the waters and separating them so there's dry land. And Noah is all about taking those waters and put them back together so the dry land disappears. So it's like he describes that the order is flipped. You have all of these creative processes that you can see in Bereshit, and then you can see all these anti-creative processes, these destructive processes in Noah. And at the end of Noah, they reverse again and everything gets created again. So just as we took the person and separated them into two, male and female, in Noah, we take the male and female and we put them back together again into the teva. We take, everything creative and life sustaining came out into the world in Bereshit, goes back into the ark in Noah, and then comes back out again. So there's this process of, you don't need to be scared. Even if this process reverses for a moment, it'll reverse again and will become creative.
Well, it's much like respiration, breathing.
Yes.
It's a breathing in and exhaling out. It's something else I want to go before we go. The teva being made of gofar or cedar.
Yeah.
That now explains why the smell wouldn't be too bad with all of the animals in it. It just fit me. Like, could you imagine how that would probably dampen the smell of all of these creatures living in? They didn't give them baths before they went into the ark. So could you imagine the smell? And that I've just realized, wow, the cedar would have been a very pleasant odor.
Yeah.
In that place. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting thinking about the practicals of this kind of baffling process, isn't it? It's happening on such a scale, and we've never seen anything like this.
Right.
So you have all these you have people being skeptical, but I don't know what they're being skeptical of, because there's this tendency to say, this is imagine a magic boat that has all the species in the world. You go, well, there are 40 kinds of viper. Are we taking one of every kind
viper?
of viper?
Right.
Yeah, and 1,000 spiders. There's two of every kind of spider, and it's like, no, we don't know.
Right.
We don't know exactly what this is. So the thing that you're doubting, I may be doubting as well. We know that some sort of colossal process happened under the guidance of God, where God spoke the universe into existence and then said, Noah, I want to involve you in a rescue plan for an example of the species of the earth, and then God then proliferates that out onto the world. But we're not specific on the details.
Correct. So, and we're assuming when it says species, it meant every kind. It is it's the species. So it's the species of birds, the species of mammals. I mean, it didn't have to be every living animal. I think that's what most people assume.
Yeah. I don't know how this was done, whether this was done with non-Euclidean physics or if this was done with a small number of animals which were then proliferated out to great diversity. For me, it doesn't change the price of eggs.
No, I mean it could have been. I mean, I'm just saying this. I'm not saying that this is a actual discussion, but we know that you could do that with DNA. I mean, you could actually
it could have been a DNA arc.
Right. I mean, you just don't know.
But I may sound like an apologist in this. My point is not that I'm saying, oh, it's this and or it's this or it's that. My point is that I'm saying the important thing for me about this story is God was looking for a way to preserve the non-violence at the expense of the violent. God was looking to intervene and say, how do I turn this ship around, so to speak?
Correct.
I don't want this to go down to a place. Yeah, I don't want this to go in a direction where there's more and more violence and nobody cares and nobody's stopping it. I want to take us back in one. I want to grab the steering wheel,
right,
and help you get back into a path where you're going towards an ideal.
Correct.
And we still have the obligation to make the ideal come about. We still have to say,
Absolutely.
I say no to suffering. I say no to hunger. I feed the hungry. I heal the sick. We're involved. You were talking to me about before when the Chassid says, we want Mashiach now. A friend of mine met a wonderful Chassid back in Manchester in England, and they were talking, and the Chassid said to him, what have you done today to bring Mashiach? And my friend was like, I wasn't prepared for that question.
Well, of course. And I'd venture to say that most of us would be gobsmacked at that question for the first time.
Right. But then once you hear it, you think, okay, that's my target. Any mitzvah, any kindness, any charity that I can do today is clearing out the suffering and making room for God. Correct. Every time you alleviate somebody's suffering, it might be listening to the lonely person on the bus. You know, you don't have to do everything. What's the phrase that it is not for you to finish the work, but nor is it for you to leave it be. Correct. You can only do what you can do, and the weight of the world is not on your shoulders. But if we can all take a little bit of kindness, or we can get a little bit of mercy, or a little bit of charity, then every time you do something, you make more room for God in the world.
I would submit that our mitzvahs, our actions of goodness and righteousness in the world, becomes a teva for ourselves. I mean, it helps us rise above any of the chaos that might exist in the world. So this lesson is so deep and so broad that we could bring and extract so many different ideas that can help us in the modern day. And we're not just talking about an ancient story that literally exists in every culture of the world.
Right.
Right? I mean, this story exists in South America. You just name it. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes now. Do you want to continue on, or you just want to wrap it up?
Well, once you give me an inch, I'll take a mile.
Go for it.
So, a mile. I just want to add one more thing, because it's the same idea, but it's just slightly from a different angle. Is that when God created the earth, He created it with a lot of physics, a lot of physical needs. You know, He took the light and then He separated it into light and darkness, and that's the only light we've ever experienced, but it's separate. And He made land and sea, and He set rules for everything. And these were all about our needs. This is all about our physical needs. And Carl Sagan talked about the pale blue dot. You know, he looked back at as the satellite reached the end of the solar system and saw this tiny little dot, and said, all of human history, everyone who's ever lived and died has happened on that pale blue dot. And that's the pale blue dot that God made for us to live on. Right. And then He said, now you make me a house.
Yeah.
First make me a tabernacle.
Man, that's brilliant. Yes, that's good.
And it wasn't about physical needs. It was about ritual needs and spiritual needs, you know?
Right.
So that we had this vast, inhospitable universe with this tiny little pale blue dot, which was where we lived. And on this tiny pale blue dot was actually this vast, world, which is inhospitable to God because of the violence and the corruption and the evil and the hatred. Right. He says, make me a spot on that planet which is holy. And then we built this tent. And He said, now you can build me a temple. But it can't be David, because even though David is wonderful and I love him, he has got blood on his hands. And this needs to be built by someone of peace. So He got David's son, Solomon, whose name literally means man of peace, Shlomo, you know, and He got him to build this temple. And then the Romans came and they corrupted it, and they smashed and they poured pig's blood, and they said, we will not allow this to be holy anymore. And the Shekhinah isn't in the world in the way that it was then. So where's the temple now? It's us.
Correct.
So if you can make yourself holy, if you can push the corruption out of your life and bring the kindness into the people around you, you get to be the place where the Shekhinah inhabits. You get God resting in in yourself and in your life. And if we all do that, then eventually it all joins up and God's back in the world in the way that He was in the temple, but everywhere. So we're not just bringing Mashiach, we want to bring Shekhinah, we want to bring the presence of God back into the world. So here we're seeing the first time where God did that for us. Now, like exactly as you say, we need to be the ark for the life.
Right.
God rescued us from our own corruption. Now we need to rescue God's presence from our corruption.
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
When we come back next time, we're going to be starting on Tet Vav. Can I give one little geeky bit of grammar before we go?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Because we use letters for numbers in Hebrew, we say, one, we say 10 and 1, 10 and 2, or we use the 10th letter and the second letter to make 12. When we get to a yod and a hey, which means 10 and 5, we don't want to use that number, because a yod and a hey is part of the name of God. The last verse was yod dalet, which is 10 and 4, 14. So when we get to 15, instead of using yod hey, which would be the name of God, we would be scared about being disrespectful by just using the name of God for a number.
Making it common is the term.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just using it like it's just something. Instead, we use tet, which is the 9th letter of the alphabet, and vav, which is the 6th. So we're still making 15, but we make it out of 9 and 6 instead of 10. And that's how much we care about God.
That's good.
We want to, even these tiny little subtle ways, we just want to keep on showing honor, showing respect. We don't just throw God's name around like it's the same as a wardrobe or a bus.
Correct.
We want to use it like it's only so special that we have to be ritually pure, only talking to God, only addressing Him with great honor and stuff. And we can't quite reach that stage right now. But when we get the Shekhinah back, we get the name of God back again.
And we sanctify. That is what it's called, to sanctify the name of God.
Absolutely.
It is. Man, this has been incredible lesson. Though we're a little short today, but it's incredible lesson. Just a little, not much. I can't bend down like that. You have better flexibility at your age, I guess.
Well, does that mean we have time for some of the measurements of the ark?
Yes, let's go ahead and do let's go ahead and do that.
Beautiful. So I know I'm always
you
speaking too long and too much. So I'm trying to teach myself to be more curt.
Squeeze a pound. Yeah, go ahead.
So v'zeh, and this asher ta'aseh, and this is how you will make. Again, we have that taf for you will do, and there's no vav to flip it at the back. So ta'aseh means you will make. Otah, again, otah is the feminine passive pronoun. She's not making herself. Noach's making her. So this is how you will make her, otah. Shalosh me'ot. Shalosh is 3.
3.
Me'ot is 100. So 300 amma. And an amma is a cubit. So we get specific measurements. A cubit is about elbow to fingertip. That's a cubit. 300 of them. Not that big. It's not like you'll make it a kilometer long and a kilometer wide. It's 300 amma. So 300 amot, cubits, orech in length. Hateva will be, the ark she will be. So she's 300 of these long. Chamishim, chamesh is 5. Chamesh esrei is 15. Chamishim is 50. So you want to take a number and put im on the end, and it becomes the 10 factor of that. So chamishim is 50. Amma, so again, 300 down to 50 of this length. Rochba, which is wide. This is where we have the town of Rochevet, because it means wide things. It also means a road, a rochev, because a path is something you grind into the ground by walking. But when you want to take a cart on it, you actually have to widen it to accommodate a cart. And Shloshim Amma Kumata. And Kum means to rise. So Kumata means height. So it's 300 teva long, 50 wide, and 30 high. So that gives you it's kind of wider than it is tall, and it's longer than it is wide. So you've got this kind of image in your head of roughly what it's like. And this is why you've seen these woodcut drawings and pencil drawings of what the ark looks like. They tend to have this shape to it. This kind of. Have you ever had a Magnum ice cream? Maybe you call it something different. It's like it's a poshy chalk ice. It's got a stick and ice cream, and then it's kind of shaped like an arc. It's like wider than it is tall and longer. So it's like that shape. You keep on seeing that shape. So these people have looked at this, and they've also looked at each other's drawings and kind of approximated what it looks like. We know it's made of wood. We know it's tarred on the inside and the outside. So so God is giving specific plans, and He's giving this to Noah at the age of 500. And we're going to be told in a minute his age, and we already have been told his age is 500. And at the end, we're going to get told he's 600. So it took him 100 years to build this boat.
Right.
We're going to have a discussion next week about how after 100 years it's still only his family. Now, I'm not chas v'sholem. I'm not trying to shame Noah. He's a wonderful, wonderful creature. But there is a reason why there's an effect of the fact that he took one family. He did exactly what he was told. He could have taken it upon himself to go around convincing people to try and alleviate the suffering, persuade people to come to good. And maybe he would have failed. And
right.
maybe
And I think that's sort of the debate. It's like, why didn't he do it? Maybe he knew that it was useless effort to try.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here I lose patience over trying to untie a knot in my britches.
Yeah,
and
right.
It takes 100 years to build an ark.
Yeah. That's it. He's doing everything himself. He's not going to the lumber yard to go for wood. He's pulling down the trees, you know.
Right.
Wow. How many times did he stub his thumb with a hammer? Patish. Wow.
Absolutely.
After 100 years, have massive thumbs.
Table saws. He didn't have... Right. So I don't know how he did it, but obviously maybe he had some ancient technology we don't know about. So...
Yeah, maybe God's giving him the inside track on some stuff that we haven't thought of.
I'd venture to say that. Well, look, it's time to roll, so we're going to have to say goodbye until next Monday at 10 a.m. Don't forget to subscribe right there, and also go to Moshe's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Word of Torah. Oh, that's challenges. A dab. I think that's called a dab.
Oh, yeah, dab. That's where it came from.
Next time we'll just do that, just /. Okay, guys, it's been great chatting with you, having a great time. Pardon the humor, but that's just how we're made. We like to joke and have a good time. I was going to say that word kuma tata was said in
nice. That means raise a potato. Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you guys later. Shalom, shalom, until next week.
Good.